In this video, we're going to think about how to answer a 12-mark USA essay style question. So what is this type of question? It's the longest question that you answer on the America paper. It's worth 12 marks. It asks you to think about 2 bullet points and decide which of those is the most important reason for something happening or for the effects of something. So this question that we're going to look at in this video says, which of the following was a bigger reason why the American economy recovered from the Depression? Was it the impact of the New Deal, the first bullet point, or was it the impact of the Second World War, the second bullet point? It tells you in the question wording that you need to explain your answer referring to both of those bullet points, and that's really important. It's also really important to think about what comes after the word reason so that you kind of think about what this question is actually answering. It's not just asking you which was more important, it's saying which was a bigger reason why the economy recovered from the Depression. So all of this question needs to be answering why the economy recovered from the Depression. How did the New Deal help the economy recover from the Depression? How did the Second World War help the economy recover from the Depression? So you're going to need knowledge, your evidence about both of those bullet points, but your explanation about both of those bullet points needs to be explaining why the economy recovered. The good news about this question is that it is really easy to structure. You just need 2 peel paragraphs. You need a peel paragraph on the first bullet point, you need a second peel paragraph on the second bullet point. That's it. If you have time and you can do a conclusion really well, then you can add in a conclusion. But basically, this is 2 peel paragraphs. So this is a really straightforward paragraph about the impact of the New Deal. It's about 5 sentences long here. You could possibly do it in 4, but let's look at this as a really good straightforward example that most people should be able to have a decent go at. So it starts the bit in red with your signpost sentence, your P, showing the examiner what this paragraph is going to be about. The bits in yellow are specific factual knowledge because you're going to want to show the examiner the revision that you've done and the knowledge that you've got on the New Deal. You actually have to show off some knowledge. And the bits in green are where you're answering the question and really explaining, and repeating that question wording back is really important. So let's have a look. A key reason why the American economy began to recover was the New Deal. Really straightforward. The New Deal was President Roosevelt's plan to create the 3 R's: relief, reform and recovery. Some specific knowledge in your second sentence, great. The New Deal helped the economy recover because, look at that sentence, that shows that you're answering. It's a really great sentence to include, and you'll see it again in this paragraph, which is excellent. The New Deal helped the American economy recover because it set up alphabet agencies such as the AAA, Agricultural Adjustment Agency, which paid farmers to produce less, or the TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, which built dams and electric power stations. These agencies helped the economy recover because they helped people be less poor, e.g. the AAA, or they created jobs like the TVA, which boosted the economy due to the cycle of prosperity where people have jobs, so spend wages, which helps other businesses. However, the New Deal did not make the American economy recover completely because many of the jobs were only temporary, many people were still poor, and 1 in 10 people were unemployed throughout the 1930s. So it's an important reason, but not the only reason, why the American economy recovered. This is really good because it's got some specific knowledge. You can see all that in yellow, and you've got that explanation, that repeating of the question wording. What you don't want is this paragraph to be a random description of whatever you can remember about the New Deal, because that's not going to answer the question. It'll get you some marks if you can't explain it. It's better to put down what you know about the New Deal, but you really want to make sure that this answer is explaining how the New Deal helped the American economy, and that's really key. If you can't remember the alphabet agencies, what they stand for, so here I've put AAA, Agricultural Adjustment Agency. If you could only remember AAA, that's okay. You're not expected to remember every single alphabet agency and what they stand for and what they did, but it is a really good idea to remember 1 or 2, know what they stand for and what they actually did, because that really does help you in this type of question. So this is 5 sentences. That final sentence is really good because it tells you about why the American economy didn't completely recover because of the New Deal, which is really quite impressive because it's saying, well, I know that the New Deal did some good things, but it wasn't completely successful. but you'd still get a decent mark if you just had those 4 sentences. So it's really quite straightforward way of answering this question that most people should be able to do quite well if they've done some revision and if this came up in the exam. So this second paragraph is on the second bullet point, the impact of the Second World War, and it's going to be talking about how the Second World War caused the American economy to recover, just like we've done with the New Deal. This is a slightly longer paragraph here. We've done it a little bit more in depth, so this is something to look at if you're aiming for a slightly higher mark. But you could do, like we did on the other one, a decent answer a little bit shorter, but this is to show you different ways of doing a peel paragraph depending on what marks you're aiming for. So let's have a look together. America joining the Second World War was another reason why the economy recovered from the Depression. Again, simple, straightforward, signpost sentence. America joined the war after Pearl Harbor was bombed in December 1941. So it's showing some knowledge here, but that knowledge is important, but it's not really answering the question about how the Second World War affected the American economy. So it's all right, but it's not really getting you very many marks just yet. But then it goes into stuff that is really relevant. The War Production Board was set up, which changed factories to make them produce goods that were needed for the war, such as planes. The war helped the economy because, we've got that sentence again, it created lots of jobs in the factories building weapons, but also there were lots of jobs in the armed forces. Industries like coal, steel and oil were all helped by the war because the demand increased, and farmers also recovered because they were needed to supply more food to the military. Unemployment fell, and as more men signed up to the forces, many women worked in factories and other jobs, and by the end of the war, a third of American jobs were done by women. All of this built on the improvement that the New Deal had started and helped the economy reform because there were new factories and jobs that meant people had more money. Many also invested in war bonds, saving with the government to help the country have more money to fight the war. This all shows that the Second World War provided lots of opportunities for individuals and businesses to improve and make money, and in the 1950s Americans had a very high standard of living, showing that the recovery from the Second World War had more lasting change than the New Deal had done. So what we've got here is specific knowledge. We've got things like the War Production Board making planes, jobs in the armed forces, specific industries that improve like coal, steel and oil. We've got farming mentioned. We've got the idea that unemployment fell because men are signing up to the forces. It's talking about women and that really specific point about a third of American jobs being done by women in 1945. And it's also talking about war bonds. War bonds were where you save money with the government, so that the government had more money to invest in the war. So there's lots of different examples here. There's quite a lot of specific knowledge in this answer, but there's also a lot of explanation as well. You've got that repeated phrase, this is helping the economy because, this is increasing demand, this is helping build on the improvements of the New Deal. And what's really, really good about this paragraph is there's a little bit of comparison with the New Deal within it. So all of this built on the job that the New Deal had started, for example. And in that final part, it's talking about the fact that the Second World War showed that there was a lasting change, that the New Deal maybe had helped in the short term, but it was the Second World War that had a more lasting impact, and it uses knowledge about the 1950s to show and to prove that that change was a little bit more long lasting because of the Second World War. So it's a really good, more detailed, more sophisticated paragraph, and it really does depend where you're aiming and what you can remember on whatever question comes up in the exam. So this gives you your 2 peel paragraphs here that would answer the bulk of your question. So in the exam, it's a 12-mark question. We'd be looking for you to spend sort of 10 to 15 minutes absolute tops on this question. So do you need a conclusion? It's going to depend how quickly you've written that information and how much time you have. It is much, much better to just have those 2 peel paragraphs done really well and not bother with a conclusion. You can get a really good mark without a conclusion, and you really do want to have 2 very good peel paragraphs. There is no point writing a conclusion that just summarises or repeats what you've already said, because that's not really a conclusion. You want your conclusion to essentially be a judgment. So many students do good conclusions, and these will help you get into that top range of those marks. So we're looking at kind of 10, 11, 12. But as I say, you can get a really good mark without a conclusion. So don't worry about it too much if you wouldn't have time. But if you are going to have time, and if you are aiming for those top marks, make sure that your conclusion compares and reaches a judgment. Don't sit on the fence. Make sure you decide which of those 2 bullet points you think is more important. They need to compare, they need to judge. So which one is more important? Do they link together? Does one factor affect the other one? Does one have more lasting change than the other? If you took one away, would the other one still stand? So think about all of those types of questions and then use those to decide what you think. The best conclusions, the best judgment will run through your answer. So you might have done a mini plan and thought about this before you write that conclusion. But just remember, you don't absolutely need a conclusion. We're looking for a peel paragraph on the first bullet point and a peel paragraph on the second bullet point. And as long as there's specific knowledge and explanation, you'll do brilliantly.